Hello, and welcome back to the Emotionally Fit Humans podcast. This is episode 8, Transforming Toxicity, Building a Culture of Care and Accountability. I'm your host, Lauren Taylor, and I'm a leadership coach, a facilitator, and someone who's spent a lot of time with leaders and teams who want to do better, not just as businesses, but at being human together. Today, we're diving into a topic that every business, every team, and possibly every human has experienced or encountered at some point in their working career: workplace toxicity. And here's why this matters. Toxic cultures don't just show up overnight, they don't just happen. They're actually created through choices, patterns, and sometimes even inaction. And they don't just affect the workplace, the businesses that we're working in. They affect people and people's lives, both in work and outside of work. Did you know that research shows that toxic workplace culture is the number one predictor of employee burnout and turnover? It's not the pay, it's not workload or productivity pressure, it's culture. In fact, one study found that people are 10 times more likely to leave a job because of culture rather than their pay. So that's huge because it means this isn't a soft issue, it's a performance issue, a retention issue, and ultimately a human well-being issue because this affects people's work and lives. So let's flip the frame. If toxicity is created, then so is care, so is trust, and so is accountability. We get to choose the culture we build. So in this episode, I'm going to explore with you what really creates a toxic culture. It's not just the bad apples or people that we think. The early warning signs that toxicity is creeping in, we'll look into what they are, how to open up conversations about well-being and care without it being fluffy or forced in your workplace, how to build accountability in a way that empowers, not shames, and simple, practical steps that you can take to start transforming culture one conversation at a time. So if you're a leader or a business owner who wants to build something sustainable and human-centered, then go to the description notes where there are links there to events that I offer and that are available for you to join. So let's jump into today's episode. What creates a toxic culture? Let's start by busting a myth. Toxic workplace cultures aren't created by just a few bad apples. Sure, difficult personalities exist, but culture is the collective patterns, the unspoken rules, the repeated behaviours, the choices that leaders make or avoid. Because workplace culture is up to every single person in the team, in the building, in the workplace. Toxicity grows when expectations are unclear, when people are left guessing, wondering what their roles are and am I even doing the right thing here? This is when frustration builds. Toxic workplaces are created when trust is missing. So building a foundation of trust in your workplace is a must. People protect themselves instead of collaborating when trust is missing. They start becoming insular and a bit defensive of their own patterns, and just often isolation starts to happen when trust is missing. Communication breaks down. Gossip starts happening, the meeting after the meeting, or the conversations are outside of the meeting where people are starting to have whispers behind the team that is and the leader, and having open conversation. So our communication breaks down, where people start withholding information. You might even start noticing passive aggressive comments, and they're replacing this honest open dialogue. Toxicity is also created when leaders avoid tough conversations. This is when, problems that don't really need to be problems fester, the issues grow, and resentment grows here. Blame then becomes the norm. I often educate companies that I work with around the above the line, below the line thinking behavior right at the start of working with them. And so people start to, you might start to notice behaviors are dropping below the line where they start blaming each other. And I always say, never blame a person. Let's look at the system or lack of systems that have caused the issue. And so blame starts happening when mistakes are punished instead of used as learning experiences. People hide problems instead of start solving them. So it's important to see this, that most toxic behavior is not about bad people. It's unhealthy systems. As I said, we look to the system. And that's actually empowering, because if systems and patterns create toxicity or lack thereof, then systems and patterns can actually transform it. So going into workplaces, I teach a critical alignment model of business, and one of the elements of that is systems and structures. And if that is not solved and not effective, as I say, we don't ever blame the people. We look to the system and go, what is ineffective about this system? Or if problems start arising, I'll ask questions around how can we make this a better system so this problem doesn't ever arise again, or this person in the workplace doesn't experience this problem. So what are the early warning signs of toxicity? Toxicity rarely just shows up with a neon sign. It sneaks in. It's, like the weed in your garden, that there's one and then all of a sudden that grows. Here are some early warning signs to look for. Absenteeism, or sometimes it might be known as presenteeism, where people are turning up to work, showing up, but mentally they might have checked out. High turnover or quiet quitting is an early warning sign. Little cliquey groups or gossiping, creating us versus them cultures or mindsets in the company. A reluctance to share ideas because people don't feel safe. Or it could be that people are starting to isolate themselves from the team, separating them, spending less time with people and less collaboration. Another sign is a culture of blame or finger pointing, or people being defensive. So if you start noticing these patterns, don't panic. Start to see them as signals. They're not evidence that you're failing, but they're an invitation to start leaning in and start working on a more positive workplace culture, and start getting curious around what is really going on in the workplace. This is a time to reset. So, how do we open conversations about wellbeing and care? How do we start beginning this shift? It's through conversations. I'm a person who thrives off connection, and people in workplaces love connection. I mean, we spend a lot of time, probably at least a third of our days in our workplace. And so real, honest, and conversations matter. And sometimes these conversations might even feel uncomfortable. So here are a few ways to open the door. Start leading and leaning in with vulnerability. You might be saying things like, I've noticed things around here are feeling a bit tense. How is everyone feeling? Or I'm feeling like this in my role. How are you feeling? So lean in with that curiosity. Ask open questions. What's working well? What feels heavy or challenging right now? Start finding out. Listen without jumping in to fix. Sometimes people just need to be heard. They may not want you as a leader do anything about it. They may just ride the wave out and it might peter out as some waves do. But other times it's knowing as a leader when to step in and when to step back. Normalize wellbeing checks. So maybe it's a regular part of a meeting where we check in. How are people feeling? It might be rank yourselves, give me a score of 0 out of 10 of how you're feeling and how your well-being is at the workplace. And so make these regular check-ins not as a one-off crisis come in and rescue. One tool I often use is a temperature check at the start of meetings where everyone shares a word or a sentence about how they're feeling and how they're showing up. It's really simple, it builds trust, and it brings that reality out. So remember, care isn't the opposite of performance, it's the foundation of it. And people are the foundation of your company. And it's the foundation, like building a house, it's the foundation of the critical alignment model that I use. So how do we build accountability without blame or shame in workplaces? Because sometimes people might see this as an element of that creates your workplace toxicity where people are feeling under pressure. Yet it's about creating effective systems of accountability. So this is where leaders often get stuck because they think care and accountability are opposites. But that's not actually true. True accountability grows best in an environment of care. So here's how to build it. We set clear expectations. People need to know what good looks like in their role. And if they don't know, then how can they perform to the level that you're assuming or thinking of? Shift from punishment to learning or when mistakes are made. So when something goes wrong, ask, how can we learn from this? How can we move forward? And how can we ensure that this never happens again through creating better systems of accountability or check-ins? As a leader, let's model accountability ourselves. Let's admit our mistakes and show how you're correcting the course so that those mistakes never again. Model that to your team members. Another way is to support, don't rescue. Stand beside your people, but don't take over. Empower them to solve problems for themselves and within their team. When accountability is framed as ownership instead of blame, people feel safe to take responsibility, and that's where the growth happens. So now let's look into transforming cultures one conversation at a time. Here's the most important thing to remember. Culture doesn't change with a slogan on the wall. Oh my gosh, the number of companies that I've been to and they've got their glossy brochures or their values or posters written on the wall, and yet when I walk in there, I can sense and feel that that is what is happening. These are the unground written rules of what is actually happening on the floor. So here are 3 steps that you can take this week. These things, the culture changes through small, consistent actions. So number 1, name what you see. Don't let these problems just build up like from a mountain to a molehill. Number 2, pair it with care and clarity. Show empathy and also be crystal clear about the expectations of the team and team members. And number 3, model the culture that you want. If you want it to be a more fun culture, then bring fun. Start bringing some team building activities. If you want openness, then be open. If you want accountability, then own your part first and demonstrate accountability. If you want to feel supported, be supportive. So culture is built one conversation at a time, which also means it can be broken by not having those conversations. So the good news is that you get to choose which direction you take. So here's my challenge for this week. What's one thing that you will do to build a culture of care in your workplace? Maybe it's checking in with someone that you know who's struggling. Maybe it's asking them if they need any support, or asking them how things are in or outside of work, if that's relevant. Maybe it's having a conversation that you've been avoiding that might make you feel uncomfortable. Maybe the other person could be feeling uncomfortable on your team as well, and just opening it with a great sense of empathy and softness to the conversation. Maybe it's owning a mistake instead of brushing it aside. Whatever it is, just start small, because these moments add up and they transform culture. So if you're ready to go deeper, make certain that you go to today's show notes, where there are links to events that you can find out more. We'll be diving into practical strategies and to build an emotionally fit team within your workplace, to avoid workplace toxicity, where you can perform at your best without burning out, and where your team thrives alongside you. Thank you for tuning in to today, and thank you for choosing courage, care, and accountability over toxicity. Keep building cultures that care, because the way that we work together shapes the way that we live. Let's become emotionally fit humans together. Until next time, see you then.